Talk boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Trouble in paradise when it comes to Marlen Esparza versus Gabriela Alaniz. Apparently, the bout has been dropped from an April 29th DAZN show due to a visa issue. This is William Zepeda's next fight, which he's going to be headlining. This fight was supposed to be on the undercard. Marlen Esparza's already delayed dream of becoming undisputed flyweight champion has been met with another bump in the road. BoxingScene.com has learned that a visa issue has forced Houston's Esparza and Argentina's Gabriela Alaniz to postpone their planned multi-belt unification bout. Alaniz does not yet have the necessary documentation in place to travel to the United States, which has forced Golden Boy Promotions to drop the bout from a planned April 29th DAZN show from College Park Center on the University of Texas at Arlington campus in Arlington, Texas. You know, I really like this fight, I do, but what's curious about it is that Golden Boy Promotions has the only other champion at this weight within arm's reach, Arelimusinho, reigning IBF champion. And it's peculiar that they're moving to do this fight, this unification match, instead of that one, when that one, in theory, should be easier to make. Esparza was due to defend the lineal WBC and WBA flyweight titles versus unbeaten Gabriela Alaniz, who holds the WBO flyweight title. BoxingScene.com has learned that the bout will likely take place either June or July, with continued efforts to ensure that Alaniz's travel visa is secured well in advance. This fight will likely land on the undercard of Ortiz versus Stanionis whenever that is officially rescheduled, which could be in June or July. And for what it's worth, this is the better unification match. Esparza versus Alaniz is a lot more intriguing than, say, Esparza versus Musinho, because Marlen Esparza and Gabriela Alaniz, they're peaking. They're in their prime, whereas Areli, I've seen her last couple of fights, and she looks like she's in decline. Nicknamed La Ametralladora, machine gun. Areli Musinho, she's looked very vulnerable her last couple of fights. Has my attention about all of this is that Golden Boy Promotions has 2 of the 3 champions under their stable. A fight between them should be easy to make if both champions want it. Now, I think Marlen Esparza would definitely be receptive to a Musinho fight, but I'm not sure that Musinho would be receptive to Esparza. If she were, that'd be the fight we're getting. Now, BoxingScene.com was informed that Stanionis versus Ortiz will now take place in July, with the possibility of Esparza versus Alaniz once again paired up to stick with the planned all-Texas scheme. Ortiz and Esparza are both promoted by Golden Boy. Esparza is one of 7 members of the 2012 U.S. Olympic team to win a major title in the pros. She was part of the first women's boxing class to participate in the Olympics, and the first female boxer to medal when she claimed bronze during 2012 in London. She's currently ranked on the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list. She's collected some big scalps, albeit by the skin of her teeth. The Beth Zamora silver fight for what was the WBC title, Beth's title, at least at that time. A lot of people felt like that fight could have went to Beth. The Naoko Fujioka fight for Naoko's WBA title, yet another close call, another close fight. And those fighters, champions, great scalps that they might be for Marlen Esparza. They weren't in their prime, you understand, but they were still able to give Marlen a run for her money. Those weren't blowouts. That's what I'm saying. It's not my intention to denigrate Marlen Esparza's victories over those fighters, those champions. I'm just highlighting that those fighters, they weren't in their prime. Gabriela Alaniz is. She's 26, she's unbeaten, and she punches like a fucking mule. Argentinian fighters, they're about as tough as they come. Great chins, great power, great engines. Physically strong fighters, very strong fighters. Whereas Marlen Esparza, she's no knockout merchant. She's not an artillery fighter. Power. She's not a power puncher. She really is more finesse than ferocity. An all-around good boxer. Skill. Power's got to go to Gabriela Alaniz. The edge in power, the edge in youth as well. She's several years younger than Marlen Esparza. Contrasting styles, the classic matchup of the boxer versus the puncher, with Marlen Esparza being the boxer and Gabriela Alaniz so obviously being the puncher. For Marlen Esparza to work around Gabriela Alaniz's devastating power, she's got to keep her moving. She can't let her set her feet, plant those feet to draw power from the ground up. She has to be careful not to let Gabriela pin her down. She's got to be mindful of that as well. well, where she is in the ring relative to Gabriella. She can't allow herself to be backed into a corner. Beat those feet, play at the angles, and peck away at Gabriella Alaniz. There's not much chance of Marlene knocking her out. Marlene's not a knockout puncher. Her best bet is to try and outbox her. Outbox her for 10 rounds. Easier said than done, I know, but isn't everything. That's the assignment. In turn, Gabriella, she's got to drill Marlen Esparza. She's got to throw the kitchen sink at her. Hit her with everything she's got to wear her down. Marlen Esparza has hit the canvas before. Gabriella's got to try to stop her. There's no way she gets a fair shake on a Golden Boy Promotions show as the away fighter. Not against their unified champion. It's a fight that gives you a lot to think about. They're looking to reschedule it for the summer months. I'm still looking forward to it.
If it makes business, it makes sense. And big fights are made when they make sense for both sides. I have no problem with working with anybody. But Eddie Hearn don't have nobody. He don't have nobody he don't have no pay-per-view fighters.
Canelo Alvarez isn't a pay-per-view fighter? Isn't he the biggest pay-per-view fighter, the biggest draw in this country? And what about Anthony Joshua in the United Kingdom? He's not a pay-per-view draw either? As you can imagine, this being fight week for Gervonta Davis and Leonard Ellerbe being allowed back into the picture of Gervonta Davis's ongoing career, he's back to his old shtick. Sigh of relief. This guy turned into Moses in a matter of weeks. Matter of months. And between the time that Gervonta Davis announced his departure from Mayweather Promotions and now, looks like the stress from that caused this guy's hair to turn gray. He comes back, he looks like Papa Smurf. Eddie Hearn caught wind of Leonard Ellerbe's comments, and he took it in stride, saying simply the state of him. At Mayweather Promotions, it seemed like Leonard Ellerbe had one job, and that was to promote Gervonta Davis's fights. And outside of that, didn't seem to have much going on. I remember when Brian Custer asked him on the Last Stand podcast, what other bright young up-and-comers does Mayweather Promotions have? Because with the other outfits like Top Rank, the other outfits like Matchroom, even Golden Boy Promotions to a certain extent, they all have their next generation of fighters, their next wave of elite fighters, whereas Mayweather Promotions, for the longest time, it seems like all they really had was Gervonta Davis, that they had it all, I should say, riding on him. And outside of him and his fights, they didn't have much else to offer the sport, much else to offer in terms of a draw, a next generational talent, you know? And I remember that Brian Custer asked Leonard Ellerbe outright about Mayweather Promotions' other fighters, and I remember that Leonard, he couldn't come up with an answer.
And who's the next big star under Mayweather Promotions?
Ooh, we have quite a few young guns, as I say, you know, and I don't want to leave any names out, but we have a great roster of young talent, and we've been very selective about what we're doing, you know, again, because
Leonard, he's one of these guys that'll tell you a mouthful without saying anything at all, and that's what he did when Brian Custer asked him outright. What other fighters is Mayweather Promotions grooming? What other bright young fighters do they have? They don't fucking have any other bright young fighters. Isn't that obvious? They may have other guys signed. They might have a couple of guys under contract, but nobody the likes of a Gervonta Davis. Nobody that has the potential to go on to become a draw, even just a domestic draw or a local draw of any kind. And how embarrassing would that be for Leonard if he had to say that? Naturally, he danced around the question. Naturally. But you could ask Bob Arum about his bright young up-and-comers, guys like Jared Anderson and Keyshawn Davis, Shakur Stevenson, Xander Zayas, Shushu Carrington, Richard Torres. You can ask Eddie Hearn about his bright young up-and-comers, guys like Diego Pacheco, Mark Castro, Dalton Smith, Gary Cully. You can ask him about his unbeaten up-and-comers like Justice Hooney and Dempsey McKean in the men's heavyweight division. If you ask Eddie Hearn what he's got lined up for the future, the next generation of fighters to carry the Matchroom flag, the Matchroom banner, he'll tell you all about it. Whereas Leonard, all Leonard can do is dance around the question because they ain't got nobody. All they have, or all they had, was Gervonta Davis. And even here and now, I'm not sure that Gervonta Davis is even under contract with Mayweather Promotions. It might be all hands on deck for this fight. Gervonta Davis's last fight was promoted by Tom Brown of TGB Promotions. Leonard Ellerbe was absent, whereas he has been utilized for this weekend's fight. They've allowed him back into the picture, though. That doesn't mean that things are exactly the same as they were. And if they're not, and moving forward, you don't really have Gervonta Davis's fights to promote moving forward.
What are you gonna promote? What are you gonna do?
This guy talks like he's got this entire stable of fighters or stable of champions, these marquee attractions, when really you've been promoting one fighter, just one fighter, primarily for all these years.
And that's only because your boss, Floyd Mayweather, can't be bothered to micromanage.
In Leonard Ellerbe is not to Mayweather Promotions what Eddie Hearn is to Matchroom. They're not equivocal.
Leonard isn't to Mayweather Promotions what Eddie is to Matchroom, or what Bob and Todd Duboff are to Top Rank, what Frank Warren and George Warren are to Queensberry.
He isn't. He's a mouthpiece. He's just an employee. He's there to get the coffee.
Coffee and the bagels.
Making the way he carries on that much more indignantly ridiculous.
Really is something.
Leonard Ellerbe is a glorified water boy, but he walks around like he owns the place.
Talks like he owns the place.
And for what? Because they're letting you come to the party for this fight? Because they're letting you be involved with the Gervonta Davis versus Ryan Garcia fight?
You're lucky to still have a job, my friend.
Seems like until they brought you back into the picture for Gervonta Davis's next fight, you didn't have much to do. You went missing in action.
This guy's hair turned gray from all the stress of losing the one fighter he was promoting.
Now he's comfortable enough to run his jibs again, bump his gums.
You better hope Gervonta Davis wins that fight.
It'll be catastrophic for you if he doesn't.
Order this fight right now if you're in the UK. Don't wait. Order right now.
It's not a pay-per-view in the UK, Leonard. It's part of a regular DAZN subscription. DAZN that you used to claim nobody watches.
Remember that?
The only reason this fight is being made available in as many territories as it is because DAZN is a global streaming platform and Showtime is not. They don't have a foreign broadcast partner.
They're not available in all these other markets.
Tremendous fight with these two young guys coming together in the prime of their career. And you can't ask for nothing any better. You know, they made this fight happen, and they did it for the fans. Every situation is a little different. These two guys happen to have the biggest names in their division and two of the biggest names in the entire sport, with Tank being one of the biggest stars in the sport. And when Tank knocks him out on Saturday night, he will become the face of boxing.
There it is again, that hyperbolic claim that this weekend's fight is what will crown the face of boxing in the sport moving forward, when near as I can tell, whatever this fight does, robust numbers or otherwise, unless you can secure other high-profile names, other high-profile fighters, this is a one and done.
And that you even got this fight done, implementing a catch weight and a rehydration clause, a one-way rematch clause, that you even got this fight done. It is a miracle, because those other kids, they're not going to go for that.
You want Gervonta Davis to be the ace side in negotiations, irrespective of the other fighter, whether they're a champion or not.
That's what you want.
What kind of money do you have to offer these other kids? That's pretty important too. And the circumstances of the contest, the circumstances of the match, potential weight stipulations. I mean, you might have got Ryan Garcia to agree to all of this stuff, but those other guys.
I don't know what this fight is going to do. I don't know if it's going to do 500,000 or maybe $1 million. I don't know. But what I do know is that irrespective of what this fight does at the box office, unless you can secure other high-profile opponents moving forward,
Gervonta Davis's box office numbers are going to nosedive, and he'll be back to doing at or around 200,000 buys like he was before.
5 separate pay-per-view appearances, and not a single one of them cracked 300,000 buys.
Talk about it all the time. You can definitely get attention for a Gervonta Davis fight depending on who's opposite the ring. But if you're going to implement the same stipulations in those fights that you did in this one, those fights won't happen.
This one might.
Rolly Romero may end up having a rematch with Gervonta Davis depending on what happens in the Puello fight. The Puello fight that he says is a difficult fight.
I mean, think about it. Do you really expect Gervonta Davis to fight Devin Haney or Shakur Stevenson if he beats Ryan this weekend?
No, I'd sooner expect him to have a rematch with Rolly if Rolly becomes WBA champion at super lightweight. Puello's long, he's tricky, said Romero to FightHype.com recently. He's a world champion. He earned his belt. He's a world champion. I can't really say anything negative about him. He's a difficult fight. Rolly Romero hasn't had a rebound fight since having been knocked out by Gervonta Davis in May of last year. If you can believe that, it's been that long. It's been close to a year.
It was literally in May of last year that he got stopped.
And that they didn't get Rolly Romero back out there to have a rebound fight, to get himself back in the winner's bracket and at least acclimate to 140 pounds where this contest is taking place.
This guy fell face first into a title shot.
You find yourself asking, how is it Rolly got got this opportunity? How did he, of all people, end up getting a title shot at 140? Well, initially, the shot was offered to unbeaten Gary Antoine Russell, Gary Russell's younger brother. And what Gary Antoine Russell had to say about it was, when being a student of the game, you must consider the fact that every step a contestant takes is more than just self-gratification, and each and every last one of us do it for keeps. In other words, Puello got to catch up to me. He is behind me. No need to look back when the direction you're going is forward.
What direction is he going in?
A fight with Puello would have been Gary Antoine Russell's best bet at becoming a champion at this weight, because if he finds himself opposite the ring, Subriel Matias, it would be a lot harder.
He turned this fight down. He turned this fight down to go do what?
Move forward is what he claims, but forward into what?
What the hell's he doing? What's he so busy with?
That is, at least in part, how Romero ended up with this opportunity, how Rolly ended up with the shot. Initially, it was offered to Gary Antoine Russell, who turned it down.
What about Ismael Barroso? I thought he was the mandatory challenger to that title.
He is, but there's no money in a Barroso versus Puello fight. The boxing community at large, even the hardcores, have no knowledge of either of those two guys.
Those two guys fly pretty low under the radar.
Alberto Puello himself, he's vowing to make a statement against Romero, though I hardly think that beating Rolly, who's coming right off a knockout loss at lightweight, beating him at super lightweight, is a statement of any kind. The least you can do is beat that guy.
The very least.
So far, the other champions haven't wanted to fight me, but I think that after making a spectacular fight, they will have no choice but to fight me. And there's a champion right there on Alberto Puello's side of the street, his old buddy Subriel Matias, but Subriel, he doesn't want to fight his buddy.
Are you kidding me?
That's what he said. That's the story. Enter Rolly Romero, a fighter that has more of a profile than Alberto Puello.
And if Alberto knows what's good for him, he better beat the brakes off of this kid, because if he don't, those judges ain't gonna have no problem.
I mean, do you remember what happened in the Jackson Marinez fight? Most people that saw that fight agree. Jackson Marinez did enough to win the fight, but they gave it to Rolly. You'd think they wouldn't do that with Puello.
Rob Peter to pay Paul.
Rob Puello to award Rolly the title so they can then set up a rematch between him and Javante.
You think they wouldn't?
Don't forget that this is boxing, and these guys ain't above fixing a fight.
Fixing the outcome.